If you're a certain type of person, and I am, people often come to you for advice, and you give it. Is it helpful though? Today I want to talk to you about some Irish ideas about advice giving and what might work a lot better. Fáilte Chairde, welcome my friends. I'm delighted to be with you today. My name is Kate, if we haven't met before, and I'm a professor of Irish language and folklore, and I love to share the treasures of Irish tradition with you so that we can live more joyful, connected, and creative lives. So, advice. Do you give advice? You know, as I'm getting older, trying to give a lot less of it. Irish tradition is pretty clear that there's really some good advice and there's some very poorly timed advice or advice that really you might not want to give. In my experience, giving advice or being asked for advice can be very daunting because I think, well, I don't know. You know, I'm just a person too. I don't have all the answers. It can be exhausting because a lot of times the story that has to be told in order to get all the details to understand the whole situation goes on a long time, an hour, sometimes 2 hours in terrible cases. And it can be frustrating too, because after you've put in all of that time, you might have had the experience of having someone gleefully disregard your advice. So you spent all that time, you did your best, you poured out your love and your energy, and really nothing came of it. Maybe the person felt a little bit better for unburdening themselves, but you really weren't able to achieve much with those hours, and you might have actually missed out on something else. So I've realized as I've gotten older that when someone wants to tell you those stories and seeks, even asks directly, explicitly for advice, that what they're really asking for is not advice, but reassurance. So as I say, Irish has some interesting phrases that let us know that they're quite aware of how badly this can go. And I do want to clarify, I think we've all been on both sides of this dynamic. I know I have poured out my story to some poor hapless person, probably exhausting them, and I've certainly been on the other side of that many times. So I like knowing about this Irish way of seeing things. It helps me balance it out. So the word for advice in Irish is corla, and it means advice, and oftentimes in folktales it's translated as counsel. And I actually like that word, counsel, a lot. To me, it brings a kind of significance to it. Like, if I'm going to give counsel, I'm going to think very carefully about what and how much and when. Anyway, we have these ways of acknowledging in Irish that sometimes advice giving is the wrong thing. There's comhairle de chluas, which means advice to the blind ear, meaning for whatever reason, this person you're trying to help or advise cannot hear the advice. Some would say it's being wasted. Some would also just say it's kind of the wrong words at the wrong time. But you just know this person. One way I've noticed is if I'm seeing or hearing someone argue against whatever I'm trying to offer, I think it's time to just take a gentle step back. Like, this is not going to go anywhere. I certainly don't want to argue for my perspective if the person, for whatever reason, isn't willing or ready to take it. Comhairle an chait don mhadra, or comhairle an chait don mhadu. The advice of the cat to the dog. Isn't that brilliant? So it's sort of acknowledging that sometimes you're the wrong person, in this case, the wrong species. There's a mismatch. And I definitely have been in this case where I think, well, I've never had that experience, so I don't think I'm the right one to advise about it. The advice of the cat to the dog. Then there's comhairle an iarraidh san uair. Comhairle an Earraigh sanor, which means advice in the spring for the fall, or rather the other way around, advice for the fall, sorry about that, in the spring. Comhairle san Earraigh, advice in the spring, dan sanor. So advice in the fall for the spring, it's like too late. So it's mistimed. And you can imagine, in this case, it's almost agricultural to say, you know, if you're telling somebody all about planting and they've already reaped their crops, it's too late for that. Sometimes it's just the wrong advice. And then there's, I think, the worst of all, and I've certainly been guilty of it, which is comhairle gan iarraidh, which is unasked for advice. Often when someone tells you one of those long, long stories, you want to help, and also maybe, I must admit, you kind of want to wrap up because the hour has gone by and it seems there's no sign of stopping. And so you try to offer something and it's unwanted, it's unasked for. So that's on the negative side, that we can be giving the wrong advice at the wrong time to the wrong people. We're the wrong person. It's all just kind of mixed up a hash and they don't want the advice. It's not going to be useful. On the other hand, the gold standard is comhairle, which means good counsel, good advice. Comhairle ian, which means like sound, sincere, wise advice. And if you think about when you've had comhairle ian in your life, it's not long. You know, I think about my father. So many years ago, I poured out some tale of woe about someone, I don't even remember what. And he said, Kate, consider the source. That's all. No long song and dance. Consider the source. And that is advice that has actually served me every day, my whole life since. So I love that. I would say that's an example of comhairle ian. Now, I love this one, and this was a new phrase for me. Comhairle a shrón. Oh, Gummalishgil. Curry. Sorry, pardon. Gummalishgil means excuse me, pardon me. I just want to get this right. Curry a shrón comhairle air. New for me. Curry a shrón comhairle air. His own nose will guide him, will give him advice. Meaning he's got to go forward in his own way, by his own instincts, have his own experience, and then he'll reap the reward of knowledge. He'll be able to advise himself or herself. And I really love that we have to have our own experiences. Really, we don't always know. You know, if somebody says, people often ask me, what should I do? I have a degree in XYZ. What should I do? And it's really hard to say, other than what I have done is just find my own way forward, and so will you. And trust yourself. That's the best advice I can give. I really can't say because I'm not you, you know. So just respecting that agency in another person. I always think about my great teaching mentor, Elizabeth. One time, this young student came to me and said, oh, Kate, I know that I should have that book for my essay, but I can't find the book. I don't know. I can't get the book, blah, blah, blah. She went on. And Elizabeth, I was about to go to the library and show her how to get the book. And Elizabeth gently put her hand on my arm to stop me. And she said, Wency, that was the student, get the book. And honestly, no more than 5 minutes later, Wency reappeared with the book. And that taught me a lot too about my tendency just to jump in and see if I'm helping. Wency learned a lot more by Elizabeth telling her to get the book than she would have if I had said, come along to the library and I'll show you. Because if you think about it, what Wency probably had to do is go in the library and ask some person, how do I get there? How do I look this up? Where's, 4E, 4 East, the shelf, all of this kind of stuff. That's knowledge that she has that if I'd advised her or certainly taken her, she wouldn't have. So that's all to say. I'm thinking about advice a lot differently now that I'm older than when I was younger. And it's a relief because the truth is I now see the limitations on what I can offer and on how helpful it can be. At the same time, I know that encouragement and reassurance is always needed, Not that we have to pour out and pour out and pour out until we're tired, but just a little bit. Everyone needs it. Malulua is kainu mal, which means be quick to praise and slow to criticize. And I take that also as, if somebody says, I want to begin working out, I want to say, that's wonderful. Good luck with that. What a great resolution. Instead of the people who would say, I know, but have you checked with you need to check with the doctor. You need to, whatever. Maybe those are useful, but I love the idea of just being on someone's side and praising them. Another new one for me that I loved, Bia anima an yenu malu kui. Bia anima an yenu malu kui. Appropriate or fitting advice is food for the child's soul. That moves me so much. Children eat and drink praise and encouragement. And guess what? So does everyone else of any age. We all need it. So sometimes after one of those stories or in the middle of it, just to say, you are wise. You know so much. I know you're going to figure this out. You have all the tools you need. You're going to get there. I know. I believe in you. And that's enough. And finally, nil costas erbi erkinaltas. There's no cost for kindness. And just a kind word is often all that's needed. Again, you don't have to sit through the whole recitation. And often I've discovered that if there is a recitation, it's been given before to many others. You don't have to sit there, but it is lovely and loving to give it a little time and a little kindness. And acknowledge the wisdom in that other person and their capability, their capacity to solve their own issue, because they have it and we have it too. So I'd love to know from you about your own journey with this whole issue of advice. What advice do you have for us about advice giving? Have you found that you've changed over the years as I have in terms of advice? I'd love just to hear about your experience here, about what you think is useful and what's less useful. So thank you, my friends, as ever, for being here. I think this is quite an interesting topic and one that reflects on our relationships with other people and with ourselves. What we think we're for, how we think we really can be of service to each other. What's the highest service that we can render? My own life changed when years ago I was sitting at a breakfast place waiting for my breakfast, and I had planned a whole morning of work. I'd brought my laptop so that I could grade some essays and do some work, when a lady told me she liked my scarf, and I thanked her. And then she instantly launched into a whole long story about her son who was going to be appearing in court that morning. All kinds of details, all kinds of people. And I could feel her anxiety, and my heart went out to her. What a terrible thing to be facing as a mother. And I also was caught between the rock and the hard place of wanting to help and wanting and needing to do my own work. And it was something for me. It was a real step forward when I thought to myself, I will give this a few more minutes until my order is ready. I will listen with all my heart and try to be supportive. But after that, I'm turning and I'll be doing my work. And that's what happened. And so my order came. I wished her well. She continued to talk to my back as I turned in. She was that anxious. And a few minutes later, not even 30 seconds later, I heard her on the phone telling someone else the exact same story. There's nothing wrong with what she did. But I realized in that moment I could have used all of that working time to listen to every detail of that story, and at the end of it, she would still have been anxious, and I would not have gotten my work done. And that, I will say, is another thing that changed my life. My friends, thank you so much. Please give this a thumbs up if it's helpful to you. If you haven't, please join us and join the channel. It's free to subscribe. And mostly, I hope you have a wonderful week, and a week where you feel free to share what's helpful and to remember what is important to you too. I'll see you next week.